cover the basics about thinking about proposal writing as opposed to actually doing the writing. And we're going to hit on some of the things you need to keep in mind as you're thinking about writing a proposal. We're also going to talk about the art of forging a relationship with funders, okay? So just a disclaimer there at the beginning. Again, I'm Mary, and I have about 20 years experience in working in the foundation world. I was previously with Toledo Community Foundation, where I was their senior program officer for 15 years. I'm currently with a local foundation called the Need More Fund, and I've been there 8 years. And so usually when I'm getting ready to do these little workshops, I sort of do a tab, and at last count, I've reviewed about 1,500 proposals over the course of my lifetime. So that's kind of my basis, and I've worked with a lot of different foundations in different ways. And the other thing I think probably that is most important, I think it's one of the most important things in terms of my career path, is that before I was on this side of the fence, I was on your side of the fence. So I kind of know it from both perspectives. I've written grants, and I've also had to review grants. First of all, though, before we really begin, I want you to notice the slides. They're usually blue, but in honor of the season, I went back and recolored all of them. Okay, now, on the count of 3, I want you all to be prepared to say, let me see which way the button goes. Okay, that way. On the count of 3, I want you all to be prepared to say, "Aww," okay? 1, 2, 3. Aww. You really can't see her that, but that's the picture I want. That's little Lucy Grace. She is my grandniece, and she was born at 6:01 this morning. Oh, see, I knew it. And that really is distorted up there on the big screen. This was taken about 10 minutes after she was born and emailed to me. So that's little Lucy Grace. Now you're thinking, well, that was really self-indulgent. What does that have to do with proposal writing? A lot of times when you're writing a proposal, it's like birthing a baby. Okay. See, I can make it fit. Thank you. So anyways, little Lucy Grace, welcome to the world. Okay, first of all, I'm going to start with the do's of proposal writing. Let me ask, before I get started, how many of you currently work within a nonprofit organization? An existing oh, good. How many of you are the development officers within a nonprofit? How many of you are program folks within a nonprofit? And how many of you go both ways? Program and development, okay. Are there any folks here who are looking at establishing a nonprofit organization? Okay, a couple little. I don't know if Linda gave the disclaimer yet, and I don't mean to rain on your parade, especially at Christmas time, but indeed it is a very difficult time to be trying to establish a nonprofit organization. So especially the beginning part of my presentation will be something you'll want to listen especially to, and it ties into the do's. So let's begin, shall we? The do's. As I mentioned earlier, this workshop is going to mostly talk about the planning process. And I need to tell you that planning and proposal writing should not be simultaneous processes. I've been in a situation where they have been. We're developing the program as we write about it, and we say, oh, that sounds good, let's put that in. Okay, sure, why not? And you sort of end up, sort of concocting as you go along. And based on experience and also based on reviewing proposals, I know that that usually is not the most effective way to go about proposal writing. Instead, you need to start with the planning process. And usually that begins with the big picture and then comes on and sort of funnels on down into the specific activities or projects for which you will be seeking grant funds. So those of you who work in nonprofit organizations, how many of you know of, could get your hands on, are familiar with, and might even be able to quote from your organization's strategic plan? Okay. This is the big picture plan, and this might not even be on your table or in your list of responsibilities, but if you're going to be soliciting grant funds on behalf of an organization, you need to have an idea of the big picture and where you fit into that. Because foundations and proposal review folks are really interested in knowing about overall what you're about, and then how that relates and gives you the credibility, the experience, and the expertise to do what you say you're going to do. So being familiar with the big picture piece is very important. And if your organization doesn't have one, I suggest you encourage or take upon yourself the development one. Usually it's a board function or board in conjunction with staff that develops the overall strategic plan. The other reason strategic plan is very important from a funder's perspective is there's this stuff out there called mission creep. And like I mentioned earlier, if you're writing a proposal as you're thinking about it and you're throwing all this stuff in, you might fall victim to mission creep. And we as funders really like to know that what you're doing is really what your organization is about. In other words, we want to know you're not just chasing dollars and trying to make those square pegs fit into round holes. So it's really important. So this big picture planning process should look at, the ideas of what is the need that your organization is going to address? What is your proposed response? Potential methods for evaluating your efforts. A timely development or implementation plan. Usually strategic plans have a shelf life of 1 to 3, maybe even sometimes 5 years. And the resources that you're going to need to make your plan a reality, or in this case, your overall organizational picture a reality. So a strategic plan, but then also, at least I know I'm on a couple boards of organizations here in town, we have the big picture strategic plan, and then there's a section perhaps on resource development and the roles and responsibilities. Then there's a programmatic piece of the strategic plan. And so again, your proposal most likely will relate to the activity plan or the program plan that's embedded in the organization's overall strategic plan. So these are the types of questions that that plan needs to be addressing. And again, at this point, we're not talking about writing the proposal. This is just knowing you have this big picture plan in place, being familiar with it, and making sure whatever activities you are planning or developing for which you will be soliciting funds truly flow from that plan. A case in point, a few years ago, after school programs were all the rage, and they still are, and they obviously serve a great need in our community. But if you're an organization that's been doing feeding programs for 20 years, then all of a sudden you decide to add in some sort of after-school program. Well, that might raise a whole different set of questions for a funder. So again, if it's not in the strategic plan initially, your organization needs to take a look at that. Okay, why would we embed that type of activity in the overall picture of what it is we're doing? So again, it's consistency of mission and avoiding mission drift. Okay, so you have your big picture plan, and you have an inkling of what activity you want to solicit funds on, something that would add a piece to that big picture puzzle that you have of your activities and your organization's desired goals and outcomes. Well, first of all, I can sort of skip this page because this page is obviously entitled Conduct Research. Linda, who you just heard speak, is one of the best resources I've ever come across in the Need More funds nationally. I'm also familiar with the foundation centers and other places. Linda is a gem. She is like the jewel in the crown of Toledo. Use her, abuse her, take her out to dinner. Whatever you have to do to make use of what is available here, both through Linda and through the library, because it really is a good first place. It's not as easy as just opening the phone book, going to foundations, and then trying to establish contact. Also, if you go to foundations in the Toledo phone book, you might end up getting a new basement. So, you need to begin to do some basic research about the funding world that's out there. The plan that you have developed will help you identify potential funding sources. And again, Linda talked about use of keywords, programmatic themes, to use as search criteria. Again, drawing from your plan, that plan will provide you with some of those keywords, ideas, or concepts that you can use to try and track down and identify the best sources of funding. One of the most important steps in the process of going about submitting proposals and getting a favorable response is doing this research to make sure that your project is a good match with the funder you're approaching. We at Need More, we fund only one thing. We fund community organizing. That's it. If you've heard of groups like Acorn or Industrial Areas Foundation or those types of groups, that's all we fund. We fund across the country. Invariably, I will get calls from folks who have nothing to do with community organizing, but they try to make that square peg fit in the round hole. And it tells me that either they've done their research and are denying what they found, or else that they're just trying to build a case for something that's never going to work out. You know, I'll get, one of the best examples comes to mind. A few years ago, I got a call to Need More Fund talking about child care services, specifically INR services, where they are working to train child care workers and then match them with families. You know, there's a similar service in Toledo. It's a great service. This service was from somewhere else in the country. And they tried to make the case to me, well, by training and matching, we're helping to organize child care providers in our community. That's not the type of organizing we do. This person would not let it go. It obviously was not a match. It was never going to be a match. And so I just remember the bottom line of the conversation was that, you know, the child care needs and this and the needs of children and blah, blah, blah. And then finally she said to me, doesn't Need More like children? It's not going to work. Hey, you can try to guilt me all you want. Thank you. I've had enough guilt in my life. It's not going to work. So again, identifying truly good potential sources, or else you're wasting your time and theirs. And then the information you've collected will lead you on your way to what I call the dating, the courtship, and hopefully the marriage.